This morning, while I was taking a shower, I had an interesting idea, and I had to kind of hop out of the shower, come down to the computer, start coding it up, and see if it would work. I was thinking about navigation, specifically about controlling characters and locking them into a world where I've got a game, and I want to have my player not walk like off the edge of the world or through buildings or other things. A lot of the time, I'll set up invisible walls for this. You've probably seen it in games where you run against a wall and you just can't get through there, or you may have set it up yourself. But there's another alternative way that I had in my mind, and I wanted to see if it would work, how it would work, and what lessons I could learn from it. So I came down, started coding it up, and ran into quite a few issues. So today I want to show you what those issues were, dive into navigation a little bit with the Unity Navmesh system, talk about a couple different ways that you can use it, including moving around with the controller, but also click to move type stuff, or even having enemies that follow us around. And I want to show you some cool tricks that I came across in this process that made it so I could do jumps, falling down things, walking up ramps and stairs and other things, and make it all easily kind of just come together. So if you're interested in this, make sure that you stick around, hit the thumbs up button, hit the like, whatever that button is, or just hit the share button or the alert, the little bell, whatever you like to hit. Hit one of them, please. Really appreciate it. Or drop a comment below and let me know if this is the kind of thing that you're really interested in. Whatever you can do to engage, it really helps. It helps the YouTube algorithm. It helps me out, and I appreciate it. All right, I'm going to shut up about that now and get to going with code and how you can actually use this stuff and implement it in your game. First, though, let's see what it's going to look like. The end result is going to be something like this. We'll have a character where I can just run around with a controller, move him on a nav mesh. You'll see the nav mesh in just a moment. I can walk upstairs. I can have him jump down off of ledges. Like that, the animation's not perfect, but we could definitely set that up. And I can even walk up these big stairs and jump across big giant ledges, I think. But we'll get to that part in a moment. So, how does this all work? Let's stop playing and talk about the Unity navigation system. So Unity's navigation system is actually built into the engine. There are some external options available. There's even an asset out there on GitHub made by Unity that allows some external or extra stuff. But the basic navigation system and the things that we're going to use, the stuff that you really need to do most of the work, is already built in and doesn't require much other than us opening up the window. So to open up the navigation window, we go to Window, AI, and Navigation. You see that I actually had that tab already open here, and we can just click back and forth between the two tabs. Now to set up the navigation mesh, I want to go into the scene as it was before I worked on it a little bit. So we're going to go into the default one that came with my asset pack, this dungeon scene. I'll go over to all of my objects, and then I'm going to hit the bake button on my navigation tab and see what happens. So I hit it, and well, nothing's happening at all. I can keep clicking as fast as I want. Nothing's going to change. Not a thing will show up in my scene view, and there's a really good reason for it. The reason is that I haven't decided or told the engine what things should be navigatable or what areas our players should be able to walk on. Think about it this way. Our players shouldn't be able to walk on skulls or walk up the side of these little cages here, right? They should just walk on these platforms, maybe the bridges and the stairs. So we need to tell the game these are the things that can be walked on. To do that, we need to mark them as navigation static. So I can click on my different individual pieces of flooring here. And right now I'm using an asset pack that's, let's just go over to my package manager window and show it real quick. Go to package manager. I'm using this dungeon low poly battle arena pack. It's got each of the ground pieces separated out as a separate cube or a piece that you can kind of build and put together. Obviously not always the most performant thing, but in a game of this size and scale, I think it's perfect and it makes it really easy to adjust and build levels. But it does also mean that we need to mark each one of these pieces as navigation static. So I need to go over to my inspector window, select all of my floor pieces, and I could do that by clicking on one, holding control, and clicking the next one, and the next one, and the next one, and the next one, and the next one, forever and ever until my mind went completely crazy. Or I can scroll up here, go to the base of my floors selection, select that first one, scroll all the way down, get all the way to the bottom of floors. Look, it goes right to that tower, it looks like. Hold shift and click to get them all selected. So now I have all of those ground pieces selected, including some of those stairs, it looks like. And then I can click on the static box over here. Let's just drag it to the left a little bit. Hit the drop down and choose navigation static. Drag that back over to the right. And now if I go to my navigation tab and hit the bake button, remember I have to be on this bake tab. If you're on something else, make sure you click over to bake. hit bake, and look at that. We've now got our blue outline for areas that our player can walk. This is now the navigation mesh, this blue outlined area. You might notice though that it's kind of missing a couple spots. So let's fix that up real quick. To do that, I'm going to find these different spots, like these bridges that are not navigatable. I'll click on one, hold control, click the next one. Oh, whoops, I think I clicked a particle system. Let's try that again. I'll click on this one, go to my inspector tab, click on the next one, click on the next one, and let's see, one more bridge there. And then I'll go over to our navigation window. Here I'm going to do it on the object section instead. Click on object and just click on navigation static, then click bake and hit bake again. Like that, now those are walkable as well. Let's see, it looks like there are a couple other areas that are not quite navigatable though. They're just not marked navigatable. In fact, I'm not quite sure why that area didn't get marked navigatable either. That's a little strange. We'll have to adjust that though. But for now, let's get the rest of these spots. I want to get this trap door walkable. I want to get these staircases walkable. So I'll click on all three of them. Click on this staircase and then this staircase and that one, and that trapdoor, and then these staircases as well. Once these are all selected, oh, did I miss it? I think I might have accidentally got one wrong spot. That's okay. If I can get this thing clicked on, I can use it. Okay, maybe I'm not going to be able to click on that. Let's see. Go over to object, click navigation static on all of them, hit bake, and there we go. Now it's all walkable. That's looking quite a bit better for me. Well, no, these ones aren't though. Why aren't these ones walkable? Okay, the issue here is that we have set up a slope height or a maximum height that these things can walk up. So if I want to allow my characters to move up this slope or go up this ramp here, I need to adjust how high they can step or what their maximum step height is. Right now it's 0.4 meters, which is not high enough. If I crank this up to something like a 1 and hit bake, you'll see that now I'm getting a nav mesh that's going up the staircases. And I should see that going up these staircases as well. Now, how you set that up is going to vary completely on your game, but I just want my dudes to be able to walk right up those stairs. So I'm just going to crank it up to 1 and call it good. I'm going to save this off now, leave it alone, and then we're going to jump over to moving a character on this nav mesh. Now to set up my character, I want to begin with an actual character model. So I'm going to use this Anubis guy that I've got from the Infinity PBR low poly pack. Drag him out into my scene, and he's a pretty simple character who just plays a walk or an idle animation. I'm going to hit play to show you what he looks like. There he is, kind of standing still. And if I pause and then go over to our, let's see, our animator window and just check the walk box, unpause it, you should see that he just sits there and plays a walking animation. So that's the guy that I want to use, and I want to make him move to wherever I click on the nav mesh. So I'm going to stop playing and I'm going to add in a new script that I've created called click to move. But first, I'm going to create a new layer for my character here. I don't like having all my scripts on the same level as my character that's moving around or animating. So I'm going to right click on Anubis, hit create empty, drag that empty game object out right above it, name it player, and then make Anubis a child of it. So now I have this object here. I'll go to my scene view. It's a player object, and it's got the Anubis object as the child. I'll go to the player, and on the player, I'm going to add a Nav Mesh Agent, and then my click to move script. So the Nav Mesh Agent will handle dealing with the navigation system, and the click to move script will handle telling the Nav Mesh Agent when to actually move or where to go to. Let's take a look at the click to move script, see how it works, and then see it in action. So our click to move script has, well, it's pretty simple. It has a nav mesh agent that it caches in awake using an expression body method here to just set the nav mesh agent, calling get component. And then in update, we check to see if we've pressed mouse button 0, which is our left click, and if we're able to raycast into the scene using our camera.main.screenPoint to ray with the mouse position. So that's just a ray right in wherever our mouse is, and then does an output to our hit info if it's true. So if both of these are true, we'll have a value in hit info for where we've clicked, and we'll set the destination to that point. So I should be able to now go into Unity, hit play, and maybe it'll work. Let's see. So I go in here, I click around, and well, I don't see much going on. Oh, that time it looks like it actually moved. But most of the time it's not actually moving to the spot. I click on a spot, it doesn't seem to actually work. Let's stop playing and think about why this might happen. If we look at our click to move script, remember that it's doing a physics.raycast, which goes into the scene looking for collisions or colliders and then tells us the nearest point or if we hit a point, really, the first one that we hit. So let's take a look at the objects that we're clicking on real quick. Let's go look at these ground pieces. And here we have a mesh renderer, but notice that there's no collider here. So if we look at our navigation window, notice that this has a filter for renderers. We're building our navigation off of the renderers. We don't necessarily have colliders. In this case, we don't have colliders for our floor pieces, so we're not able to click on them. We are able to use them for navigation, but not for actual clicking. So I need to select all of my floor pieces. I'm just going to go all the way down. I'm going to do it the relatively inefficient method of just adding a mesh collider to all of them. So select them all. I'll go to the inspector window and add a mesh collider. Again, this isn't going to make a difference in this game. It's very small, but if we had a huge giant game, we might want to optimize our meshes and our colliders a little bit better. But for this, it doesn't make any difference at all. So I should be able to check that box, hit the convex box so that my mesh colliders show up right, and then come back in here, click around, and watch my character move to the different spots. Looking good so far. Let's make him animate, and then let's make him switch over to using the actual controller so we can see that in action. So to make this guy animate, we need to put on another script. I'm going to go back up to his parent object, go to the player. I'm going to hit add component. And I'm going to add a Nav Mesh Animator. This is not a built-in script. This is just a simple script that I've already created that works really well with this character's animator. I'm going to show you how it works now. Let's open it up and take a look. So here you'll see that we have an awake method that caches our animator. That's a component in our children. So it's a child animator. And then we're also caching our Nav Mesh agent. Then in our update, we just set a Boolean parameter for walk to either true or false based on whether or not our Nav Mesh agent's velocity is greater than 0.1. So if our Nav Mesh agent is moving, we set walk to true. If it's not moving, we set it to false. Pretty simple setup, but it allows us to have a really easy working character. Let's take a look at how that looks in the animator real quick, and then you'll see why it works in game. So if we go over to the animator, you'll see that here we just have a walk boolean, and we have a default state of walk that transitions into idle when walk is false, and then it transitions back into walk when walk is true. So it goes from idle back into walk when we've set walk to true. Let's hit play, try it out, and see if it works. So we hit play, and I click around, and look at that. The dude walks, he gets to a spot, and he stops moving. All good so far. Click to move functionality I think is relatively easy to understand and pretty basic. I can click up these stairs, expect my dude to walk up the stairs, and have everything just kind of work. So what other things could we do? Well, controller movement. That's the next thing. Then we'll go on to, I guess, jumping and dropping and those other types of things. So how would we set up controller movement for a player? Most of the time when we're doing a controller, we use something like a rigid body and we add force, or we set a velocity and we push the character along in that direction, or maybe we do some animation and root motion controls to move the character with that. Another way we can do it though with a controller is to actually set the destination to some point that's offset by our controller. So we're going to add a new component. It'll be a controller move script, which has two fields on it, a max distance and a max drop. Let's open it up, take a look at how this script works, and then I'll talk a little bit about my simple version of it and why it completely fell apart. So initially I thought with this controller move script, which you can see is now up to 60 lines, that it could be pretty simple. That really all I needed to do was look at my current position, offset it by a vector, maybe, going up on the Z axis as I push up or down on the Z as I push down, and then on the X left and right as I push left and right, finding a position that was somewhat around my character, like just, let's go over to the scene view. So I imagined I would find a position right around here and then use that point and move to it. The problem that I ran into though is that works great until you run up to some stairs. Then suddenly you run up to stairs and you're over here. Your character's at this point. You want to find this position up here, but really the closest point is over here, and your character just keeps bouncing back and forth off the stairs. So I needed to come up with something a little bit more intelligent. What I decided to come up with is not the most efficient solution, but something that was really simple, fast, and just worked. And that's to do some scanning outside of my character. So instead of just looking at the position right in front of my character or right next to the character where I was pushing the controller, I'm doing a bunch of checks over a large selection of areas to find the best spot to hit. Let's take a look at how that code works. And actually first, let's see it in game, see what it looks like. I'm going to take my scene view, drag it side by side with my game view, uncheck maximize on play, and then I'm going to go over to the player, and so you can see the little lines popping out of him. I'm going to hit play, and then I'll just run him over to the left or the right. So look at these little yellow dots that are coming out of him. They might not look too impressive yet, but you'll see the green one right there. That's actually showing the position that he's moving to. So let's see how this all works. Let's stop playing, go look at the code. So in our code, we cache the nav mesh agent in a wait. Same as always. It's just something that we need to do so we can reuse it. Then in my update, I'm going to create a new vector3 for our input that's reading the horizontal and the vertical input. So this is the left, right, up, down on my controller, or WASD. I'm putting in a 0 for the Y value because I only want to move on the X and Z axis, not on the Y axis. Then I'm determining what the next destination point is, or getting our destination point as some sort of an offset from our character using the input normalized. So that's just essentially turning our vector that we have from a vector that has distance into just a vector that is only a direction, so that it's always the same value or always the same distance away no matter which direction I'm pushing it. If I'm pushing all the way to the right or diagonal, it's always the same distance away. Then we check to see if that point came back with a value, and if so, we set the destination to it. So far, it seems relatively simple, but that's because getDestination is somewhat obscured. I also want to point out that this right here, this vector3 with a question mark, is just a nullable vector. It just means that it could be a vector3 or it could be a null object. You can put a question mark after anything that's not nullable, essentially, and then turn it into a nullable object like this. So let's see how the getDestination works. I'm going to go to getDestination, hit F12, and take a peek at it. So here, you see that I'm passing in a direction. That's the direction that I'm pushing. And then we're looping over a height amount. So we're starting off at a maximum drop value. So a minimum value below where my character is, which right now is like 2 meters down below. I'll start looking at a position that's 2 meters below and go all the way up to a position that's 1 meter above. So this way I can look for positions down below on the ground and up above me, like on stairs or on a ramp. Then we also increment the height by 0.1 meters each time we loop through this. So I'm going to go through, start at -1, go all the way up to +1 meters. And we're going to look for a destination at each one of those heights. Not just at each one of those heights though, but at multiple distances on each one of those heights. So we're going to start right up next to the player, go down all the way up, and then we'll move out, go down all the way up, and continue on. So if we're able to get a destination at our height, then we'll return back that value. So here we call destination equals getDestination, which is another overload of it that takes the height. And you can see that right down below, a little bit previewed. If we're able to get one, we return it back out. Otherwise, we return null because remember, we can return null out of here. And if we get null back, we don't have a vector or a destination, then we just don't do anything to set our destination on the Nav Mesh agent. So how does the next layer of getDestination work? Let's take a peek. We loop through a distance value now of 1 to our max distance. So now imagine we're starting at 3 meters down, 1 meter out in the direction that I'm pushing with my character. Then we're going to go outward. We're going to go outward from that 1 meter up to our max distance by 0.1 meters each time. So we're going to start at 0.3 down and 1 meter, or 3 meters down, 1 meter ahead, and then go up until we're 1 meter ahead and 1 meter up. Then we go to 1.1 and 3 meters down and scan all the way up again. You're going to see this all again just in a second with the little lines that I have in debug mode. Once we do that, so we go through this loop, we figure out the offset at that position, then we check to see if there's a nav mesh at that offset. If there is, we return it. We check to see if there's a nav mesh at that offset just by sampling the position of that target point, getting the result out into this hit info, and using a maximum distance of 0.1 meters. And then for the final parameter, we need to set our nav mesh section to do all areas. Let's just bring this in a little bit and zoom it in a little, or zoom it out a little. So here you'll see that we use navmesh.allareas as our final parameter for this area mask. So we do the sample, we check to see if there's any point near that target point, and if so, we draw a line in green at that little position and return it. Otherwise, all of this code really after this is just to debug. We draw a little yellow line and say, hey, we didn't get one, we return null, and then we continue on the loop. So this loop just goes through all of the heights, all of the positions until it finds one that hits. So let's save this off. Let's go into Unity, and then I'm going to load up this pre-baked version of the dungeon here where I've turned things around a little bit and just kind of cleaned up the lighting and the setup. Everything else is exactly the same, except I've got a camera now that follows my player around, and I put on some post-processing effects. So I'm going to hit play on my character one more time and try running him around. So I'll go to him in the scene view, just hit F over them in the scene view, and run around. You can see my little arrows popping up. I should be able to run up some stairs. If I go over here, look at that, I can walk up the stairs. I can't, however, jump quite across them. And that's something I'd like to be able to do. I'd like to be able to jump and to be able to drop down. Right now, our code kind of handles dropping, or at least the code for setting a destination that's down below. Let's see that in action. Let's run over here and watch this guy as I look up here. And you might see some NPCs start walking over to me. So let's watch as I start running over here. Look at the little spots. I get a spot down there, but I can't actually go down there because once I get far enough away, my new spot is valid up here. So let's make it so my character can drop down off the edges real quick, maybe do a little bit of a jump, and then we'll talk really briefly about how those NPC skeletons are chasing me around. So we'll go to the navigation window one more time, and I'm going to change this drop height. Instead of 0.4 meters, which is about half of a character's height being able to drop down, I'm going to change this to something like 2.1. And I'm going to turn my jump distance up to something huge like 3 because I want my characters to be able to jump really, really far. I'll hit bake and look at that. You see that I now have all of these little lines. These lines are showing me links for where characters can jump down off of a nav mesh or even right here across an area. So I should be able to now jump across this spot with my character or jump down from here. Let's save, hit play, and try it out. In fact, I'm going to try, I think, jumping first. So I'll run over to this little area, see if I can jump across it. See if it's going to work. Oh, it doesn't look like my jump is working perfect. Sometimes there's a little bit of work that I got to do there to get it working, but let's try the drop down and see if that works. So run over here, click on it, or just not click. There we go. Just jump down, and it looks like it worked fine. Let's try this area up here and see if I can jump across this spot to go between these two little places. Let's try it out. I click and jump, so I'm not able to get across. And the reason that I'm not able to get across on both of those is, again, on my player. On my player, I'm only looking 3 meters out, and if you look at that little line, it's not actually getting to the nav mesh. Let's look at the nav mesh. The little line's not getting there. So go to my inspector. Let's turn this up to maybe a 4, and then go over to my game view, and look at that. Now I'm able to jump across. Oh, I jumped across and dropped down. I bet I could probably even jump across all of these little ledges now that my distance is a little bit further. So there we go. It's all fixed up. I'm able to jump nice and far, and I think that's pretty cool. I need to go back here, reset my jump distance one more time. I think back to that 4 and bake it one more time. So the last thing I wanted to talk about was those NPCs, the skeletons that are chasing me around. I'm going to hit play one time, just let you see what that looks like. So here we go. I run over this way, and you see that there's some skeletons coming down. They're walking right down, and they could, of course, jump down as well, too. But they'll follow me wherever I go. If I go this way, they'll follow me. If I jump, oh, whoops, I can't make that jump. Let's see. If I go over here, that one jumped across and followed me as well. So again, with the jumps, by the way, you do want to usually trigger an animation. I didn't think that was worth doing right now, but you'll probably want to trigger an animation when they're doing that off-mesh jumping. But no, just notice that this dude keeps following me. How does it work? What's going on there? Let's take a peek. I have these followers in my game or my scene right now, and they're just skeletons set up just like the player. They have a nav mesh agent. They have a capsule collider they don't actually need, and a rigid body that they don't need either. These are just side effects of things that I'd had on there before. So I could remove both of those. All they really need is this nav mesh agent and the target or follow target move script. It has a target field here where you can see that I have no target assigned. But if I hit play, it's going to find a target. It's going to find that player. And it's going to just make that character walk towards the player. If I go into the script here, you'll see that it doesn't really do much. It caches our nav mesh agent in awake. And then on enable, it tries to find a target if there isn't one by looking for a click to move script, which it just assumes is the player. And then in the update, we check to see if our distance between our nav mesh agent's current destination, so the last place that we told it to go, and the current target's position. So if the position of that target essentially has changed by more than 1 meter or 0.1 meter, sorry, then we will set the destination again and just do a little log, hey, we set the destination. So now we'll only set the destination when the target actually moves, but we'll set it every time the target moves, and that makes them follow. That's really all we need to do to make that happen. All right, I think I've kind of blabbed on enough about navigation. If you're new to navigation, hopefully this was a good, quick introduction. And if you just wanted to use controller movement or to listen to me talk about some interesting stuff that I came across, hopefully it was helpful for you there as well. If you're into this kind of stuff, you like it, or you just don't mind hitting that like button, I really do appreciate it. Also, want to say a special thanks to everybody on Patreon and all my students and all you guys out there that just leave comments and say nice things all the time. I really appreciate it. Thanks again. I'm going to say goodbye now. So, bye.